Hey, I have to do this rain effect on a window at some point, so I thought I may as well make a little how-to on it as well. So hopefully some of you can find it useful. It's not software specific, so I'm using 3D Studio Max, but you can basically use any 3D software as long as it has a material that supports opacity and displacement maps. It should be fine. But anyway, this is how I do it in After Effects. So yeah, you just start a new comp and make it quite big, so 4K is pretty good. Once you've got your main comp, create another one, and these will be for your rain streaks. You can probably get away with 128. A height maybe 2048, half. And then in here you just want to create, make sure your fill's set to solid white, and just create a shape by dragging. You just want to create some sort of like this will be your rain streak. That's a quick simple sort of trail. And then extend this out to the comp width. You don't want to keep it solid white. The way displacement maps work is everything that's black will stay level, and everything that's white will get pushed out. So if it goes from black directly to white, it's just going to go straight up. So make the fill a gradient. With that gradient, I'll set it, so you want to set it so that it fades away. So it starts off, maybe you don't want it solid white, so set it to at the moment it's down a bit, so it's probably down there is good. And then on the other side, you want that to go to a very, not exactly black, but a very dark color. And you don't want to touch the opacity yet, and I'll show you why later. You can grab the little gradient handles. Where are these handles? There they are. So here's one, so just set that up near the top, and the other one you want to put down near the bulge of the head. It won't push out as much where the tail is, and where the head is it'll push out more. But because it's not 100% white, it won't push out 100%. So what you want to do there is you want to create a little head nub. So you'll just create another little shape, pretty closely matching what you've got there already. And then you want to make that a solid, not a gradient, you want to make it a solid. And you want to make sure the solid is 100% white. And you can see now it sort of looks a bit like Slender Man's finger. So within the layer, just add a layer style, inner glow, and change it to normal, 100% opacity, and I'll change this so you can see what it looks like. So adjust the size a bit, so you can see that how it's sort of it's bringing it in. So you want to sort of do it so that it's not too flat on top. So something like that. So that'll be nice and round. And then you want to pick the surrounding color. So just get the eyedropper and pick one of those colors. And what that'll do is that'll create like a nice little bulge at the end. And that's basically how to do like one of your rain streaks. So I'll call that trail, and I'll rename this one Trails Animated, and then I'll bring a trail in. So what we have to do now is we have to work out whether we want this to be tileable or not, and it's probably better to start it off tileable, because then you can adjust the scale later. If the map comes out too big, you can scale it down and tile it, so you can make it smaller. So it's a lot easier to just tile it from the get-go, then you've got a lot more flexibility. So what I'll do is I'll make it tile. So in that sense, you have to make these the animation loop. So when it leaves the screen, it has to come in the screen at the same time, so that it continuously, it's tileable like that. So it goes positive from downwards. So if the top's 0 and it's 4096 pixels big, then the bottom will be 4096. So it's sitting here in the middle, which is 2048, which is half. So all I want to do is go to the end, and then I want to extend it, add it by 4096. So the easiest way to do that is pull up the calculator. I'm not a programmer, so I don't do maths in my head. So here we go. So 2048 plus 4096 equals 6144. So I'll just type that in here. 6144, bang. And now it's gone exactly that amount of pixels down. So what we want to do now is, because when it leaves the screen here, you want that head to show up coming in. The easiest way to do that is to just copy it. So Control D to duplicate it. I just want to move that, offset that upwards. If I go out here and just move it, you'll notice that it adds a keyframe and it doesn't move the whole thing. So what you want to do is, if you move it on a keyframe, then it will move that keyframe. But if you click on the position track, the position, once all the keyframes are selected, it'll now move both keyframes, or all the keyframes on that track together. So I'll just hold Shift and press hold the up key till it goes to negative 2048. Not too far, that's close enough. So I'll zoom in a bit and nudge it again. 48, there we go. So that's, now I've got it offset. So when I play it, it should loop. Yep, there we go. Now I've got the animation. You want to make it look a bit more like a streak. So what I'll do is I'll create a displacement map to do that. So just do composition new 4096, and then we'll chuck in a new solid. Just use a black solid for now. And then, so we'll go to the effects and we want to generate a fractal noise. So just type in fractal, there we go, fractal noise. Drag that onto the solid. This is what we're going to use as displacement map. So we'll go back to the trails animated. Actually, I'll call this dis first, that's displacement. So go back to trails animated, and now what we'll do is we'll add the displacement map to the comp. Turn it off so you can't see it. Add a new adjustment layer, and now in the adjustment layer we want to do a displacement. So you can type in displace. I'm going to go displacement map, so drag that onto the adjustment layer. Now up here, set it to use luminance, and then the map, set it to use displace. So now what that does is it's using, you can't see it very well, but it's actually using the displacement map that we made. So if we adjust the strength, you can see that, you know, it sort of starts to go a little bit haywire, but you can see that's, you know, that's way too small for what we need. So we'll just go back to the displacement map, and over here in transform, we'll just set that scale, just drag it right up, something like that, and just go back and see what that looks like. Maybe increase the strength a bit more. And it's still very detailed, so maybe we'll turn the complexity down a bit. Where is that? Complexity, so maybe turn that down to 4. Scale it up a little bit more again. Go back to see what that looks like. There we go, it's starting to look a bit more like water now, so like that. Maybe change this a bit more so make the scale even bigger. See what that looks like. There we go. So that's a cool little effect just there. So I'll just move on to the next part, which is I like to add little dots. If I take the trails animated, chuck that into a new comp, and I'll call this one trails drops. So now what I do is I add, and I'll draw just some weird sort of like drop. That's a raindrop. What I like to do is make that, you know how sometimes when you see the water on the window, it'll go down, and then as it comes near one, it'll sort of suck it up, get heavier, and then fall faster, sort of that. So as this comes down, I like to sort of bring the little one towards it, so it sort of like sucks into it. So from about here, so I'll just open up the controls, set a keyframe for path, and then I'll go to the next frame, maybe 2 frames forward, and I'll animate this sort of coming up here to sort of suck into it, and this one as well, sort of like that. So now I go back, so it's like plunk, and then I go forward one and move this up a bit more, forward one more, and then about here is where you want it to disappear. So the next frame it'll be 100% transparent, so I'll just set an opacity frame, turn it down, go back, turn it all the way up, and then what that means is it will be like, see how it sort of sucks up. And one thing to be in mind of, put it on the layer below so that the trail will go over the top of it, sort of like that. So, although at the moment you don't want that drop to be completely white because it'll be too high. So we'll just change it to a nice little, I don't know, a nice little grey colour, something like that. That's sort of mid-range. So you want to animate that, so because this one gobbles him up, but because this animation is going to loop, you want it to come back. So basically, you just wait until the tail's gone. I'll go back into here, and I'll copy this last frame, paste that there, and then I'll go a few steps forward, and I'll just paste it again, go jump back again, and this is what I'm going to do now. Is Control T, and I'll just scale it up a little bit. I'll just change its shape a little bit too, and then what happens is that's going to mimic it sort of go, you know, and hit the window, animate the opacity again. So one step back, you want to animate it at 0%, and as it comes in, you want to animate to 100%. And what that'll do is it'll make it look like it's sort of the rain's splattered on the screen. I'll shift it across a little bit, so maybe like over here, and you'll see as the rain streak goes past, then it will splat on the window, and then the other one will gobble it up, and it'll just basically hit that. So that's it there. Suck it up. Just want to go past, lands again, and that'll just keep looping. So that's a good way of getting some more interesting stuff happening in there. Alright, and now for the final layer is I want to add a it's sort of like rain specs. So what I'll do is just go new composition, keep it the same, and then I will chuck you want particles, so just type in part, you see particle world. So you want to chuck in a solid so you got something to work with, and then I'll chuck the particle world onto it. Now what we've got is this particle shootout, which, you know, you don't want it to do that. You want it to sort of just a whole bunch of specs fill the reducer. I'll try and change the physics first. So you don't want any velocity, so turn that down. Gravity, turn that all the way down. And then that's just, you know, staying in the same spot. So you want to just extend the particle field to cover the whole square. Turn the Z down, so there's no depth. Just change this particle type to a shaded sphere. Then you want to change the color, so make this a white. Just want a white too. Maybe change the size, turn the size right down to something really small. Max opacity, turn all the way up. Maybe make a lot more, so birth rate change from 2 to say 6, maybe even 8. Yeah, that should be alright. And now you've got these little sort of flicking specks. Now one thing, if I set it to full quality and zoom in, you can see here, sort of like, you know how it's like, see this, it's got, the shaded sphere's got a nice little fall off already. And I thought originally, oh, it's done for me, but the shading's actually not right for bubbles or like specks of water, because it's too linear, which means it comes out more like a triangle. So what you want to do is you want it to be more black around the sides and go to white quite quickly, so that instead of being linear, it bubbles out like this, so it makes more like a bubble shape. So what I did was I added a new solid, just made it white, and then I put that underneath, and then I set that to use the alpha of the layer above it. So basically I can add my own shading to those spheres to get the effect that we want. Where's the spec? Oh, I didn't name it, so I'll name this one specs. So rain specs, and I'll just create this will be our final comp, so I'll comp everything together. So I'll make a new one, I'll call it rain loop final, and I'll chuck a black solid to the back so that we don't have to worry about alpha issues. And then I'll chuck so put trails drops in there, and that's the final one. Yep. So it's got the little suck up one there. So just as he sucks that up. Alright, so now we want to add our own shading to these specs, but we want to make because basically that's all there is to it. You just you can just add some shading, and you can make as many animations, as many trails as you want, but it's not going to tile, it's not going to loop. So we want to do that. So I'll do that first. So just in this rain specs one. I'll just duplicate this rain specs, and as you can see they take a while, so they start off with nothing there and then they finally get into it, so that's not going to loop. So what I do is I just add it to a new comp, I'll just duplicate it, I will go time reverse layer. What I'll do with that is I'll move the first one, offset that halfway, and then offset the reversed one halfway, and then what that does is it gets to halfway through and it just starts reversing back, and the start and the end are basically the same, so it'll just loop. So it's not the perfect way to do it, but it's going, everything else is happening, you won't even notice. So that's how you loop the specs. So one thing I should do is in the loop final, now I should replace loop specs with the rain specs loop. So I'll put that down in front of that one, delete that one. So now I've got the final one there. Alright, so now I want to shade the specs. So we can go into the loop, and I'll add a layer style in a glow, set it to normal, all the way opacity, and I'll set this to a color that you can see. Alright, so now we've got a nice little fall off, but the problem with this is it's not going to give us the best shape, so we want to add a better one. We'll change that to a gradient. So now I'll edit the gradient, and I'll leave this color red so you can see what it looks like. So there we go, so we've got a gradient. But the good thing about using a gradient is we control this midpoint here, and we can set it so that it goes to something like that maybe. I'll set this back to set that back to black, and what I'll do is with the second color, I won't make that completely white because that'll be way too big. That'll be like as far as the displacement will be. So instead of them being tiny little specks of like water, they'll be like these elongated, big, stupid, dick looking things. So I'll bring it down to some sort of grey, maybe halfway, so they don't come out so much. And then that's done for that. So what I'll do is I'll copy that. So I'll copy that layer style, I'll paste it onto the reverse layer as well, so that they've both got the same effect. And then what we've got there is we've got the nice little rain specs. So in our final, they're a nice sort of color, so they won't pop out too much, and they're looping. Alright, so now I'm going to add the shading to the streaks and the drops. I can't just add a like I did with the little specks. I can't just add a inner glow to that, because it's gonna. What happens is it looks alright down here in this head bit, but what you need to do is once you start making you want it to be a nice sort of, instead of being more like a bubble, you want it to be more smoother like this. And to get that effect, you have to really increase the inner effect here on the head so that it meets in the middle. But what happens when you do that is it might look really nice here, but you go all the way down here to like this thin bit or the end of the tail, and it just goes away completely, and you don't get the best effect. You want it to sort of keep that nice groove the whole way along, but keep a nice smooth smooth sort of gradient on it. So the best way I found to do that is just add a fast blur and just increase that a bit to something like I don't know, 25. And what that does is it keeps, see in here, it gets thin, but it still keeps most of its form, which is good. But obviously we've got this really bad fall off, which will end up being, it'll probably end up something like this, which we don't want. We want it to be like that. So the easiest way to do that is to just duplicate the same layer, delete that blur effect, and then what we can do is we can use that top layer as an alpha matte. And what that does is it cuts off all that, you know, ugly blur on the outside, and it gives it a nice sort of effect. But there's another problem, and that's because we've just eliminated all the outside, which was the actual area that went to black. Now the edges aren't going to start at black, which means it's not going to come out from the window or from the level. It's going to distort forwards a bit. So, and you're going to have this really ugly, sharp stretching. So what you want to do is you want to keep the edges, you still want to keep the edges black. So this is where we'll add our fill effect, but we'll do it really, really subtle. So all I'll do is I'll add another trails drops layer above it. And in this one, this is what we'll add our really subtle fill in a glow effect. So I'll go back down to glow, change it to normal, raise it up a bit, and what I'll do is I'll add a nice sort of I'll add a nice gradient color to it. So I'll go into edit gradient and I'll keep it red just for now so you can see. Yeah, so I'll increase the size to double that. And I'm just going to check that we don't lose any of that information here. Yep, that's pretty good. So now I will go back to the gradient and adjust the offset so that it goes more towards the outside. So maybe like really low, so that it might even be good. Yeah. So now that's going to have, it's still going to have a nice edge that fits all the way to the level, but it goes to, you know, it wants to go curved really quickly. Set that back to black so that, you know, it's how it's going to be. But one thing you notice is it's not showing the layer underneath that we had the really nice soft blur. Now we've just, you know, overridden that one with that fill effect. So what we want to do is we want to turn the fill down. So with layer styles in the blending ones, you can actually turn fill opacity down. So when you set that to low, it'll get rid of the original layer. So we'll set that to 0. But things you notice, nothing happens like it's still got the fill there, but the original layer is gone. We just don't notice anything, and that's because our actual layer effect, the gradient, is actually using a solid color here. So what we want to do is we want to set that to 0 opacity, and now what that'll do is it'll bring out our layer underneath. But we also want to make sure that the two colors that we're using are the same. So it fades from black 100% to black 0%, because if you've got fading from black 100% to white 0%, it's going to have this weird sort of thing in the middle. So we want to make sure that last color is also black. So now it looks perfect. All right, and now what we can do is we can see another problem, and this is what I was getting to. See this see this, how you can see this little speck, even though it's underneath the drops, you can still see the speck come through. And that was the alpha issue I was telling you about at the start. So that's why I told you not to use alpha, and this is why. Because this streak here, because we're using that as a mask to put over our blurred one, what it's doing is it's taking the black and white value, so all the black is making transparent. So the problem with that is it's showing these little specks underneath. And if we had started it with alpha from the start, we wouldn't be able to do the next step, which basically what we're going to do is we're going to mask out the specks. So if we go back to specs loop comp, and then we bring in the original trail drops, bring that over the top. Right, so here's one. So you can see up here, there's a little circle there. So the final comp. So what we'll do is, so we'll set this trail drop, we'll change the mode to silhouette alpha, and what that does is just cuts through. So now these little specks won't show up underneath where the trails are supposed to be. So in the final comp, now you can see that cut off. Okay, this will loop, it will loop now, but there's still a couple of problems. Now you notice up here, see where it meets the top or meets the border, it's got this dodgy effect up there. One of those is because of the fills. So the fill layer that I added over the top, if I turn that off, you'll see it goes away. Another one is the blur. So if I go to the blur effect we put on it, turn the blur on and off, the blur is also doing that. But the blur has a really good little checkbox here called repeat edge pixels. So I can just tick that and that'll make it go away. So that's easy, simple as. I wish the fill effect did that, but I haven't been able to find the option for it yet. So if someone knows how to do that, that's awesome. So I'll turn the fill effect back on. So this is our last problem to fix now. We've got to fix this little problem. What I do to fill this is I will go into trail drops. So this is the trail drops that's in that comp. So what I want to do is I want to extend it out a little bit. To do that, I'll just go to the comp. So comp settings, I'll make sure the lock is off, and the height I'll just extend out by, say, I don't know, an extra 200 pixels either end. So now you can see that it's extended out more. So all I have to do is just duplicate this layer and then move it all the way up. And what we want to do is we want to meet where that sort of sits. But you notice obviously now we're getting a tile issue, so we have to fix our tile issue as well. So I'll do this one more time. So duplicate it again, and I'll move this one all the way down to the bottom. And I'll eyeball it for now, I'll fix it later. When we put this layer into the final one, it's gonna extend it out a bit more and create that fill all the way up. But now we can see that we haven't, so we're getting the tiling issues now, because obviously where the head down the bottom leaves, it's not coming in where the top one enters. This is all to do with the way the displacement map works. So if we go back to the displacement map, we can see that this displacement map doesn't tile. So we want the displacement map to tile. So what we'll do is we'll just copy it. So we'll duplicate one, and we'll offset this. So offset this up to say 0, and that'll just move it up to 0. And then we want to duplicate it again, and we want to move this down. I'll move this down to 4096, and that will be sitting. So we've got basically 3. So we've got the one sitting in the middle. We've got one shifted up to the top, and we've got one shifted down to the bottom. And now all we have to do is create a little map. So I'll create a shape because we want to fade those out. So I'll just create a shape like this, and what I'll do is I'll chuck a gradient. So I'll set these both to black. Now I'll chuck one in another color in the middle. It's also set to black. An opacity one in the middle. And now on these edge opacities, I'll turn them down to 0. So now we've got a nice little we've got a little fade that happens. Rotate it 90 degrees. And now I will adjust the gradient. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so there we have it. Duplicate that. I'll put one above one of the sections, and I'll just alpha mask that. I'm going to invert it. Alpha invert. And I'll do the same to this one. Alpha invert. And now what we've got is, so you can see the top is only half, so we're sort of half fading from the top and bottom ones to reveal what's in the middle, and that'll tile from top to bottom. It won't tile from left to right, but we don't have to worry about that at this stage. So now with our trails drops, we've got, you can see here, you got the comps extended a bit to account for the extra we need, and it also is up there, and that should loop perfectly. So now if we go to our final comp, and now you can see that at the top there, turn our fill on and off, and it will tile. That's the easiest way that I could figure out how to create a animated rain displacement map. The way then you export it as an opacity map is you simply just go through and you just turn off all the effects, and go into your trail that you made at the start. Just change that to a solid and make sure it's white, and turn the layer style off, and there you go, and go final comp, and now there you go. That's your opacity map. But luckily for you, here's one I made earlier, which I'll put a link down in the description so you can download it and just have it do what you want with it. It's tileable and it's 4K. So, alright, so now we've got our two animated maps. I bring it into 3D Studio Max, and I've just set up this really simple scene with a window and a windowsill. Just do a quick render so you can see what it looks like. There you go. So it's just really simple. And what I'll do is all I was gonna do is put it down the window, but I thought this is a good opportunity because it's using a displacement map. It gets to conform to any mesh you use. So I thought I'll make the mesh go over the windowsill as well. The easiest way to do that is to come into the front view, just create a little plane. Alright, so what I realize as well is, see here, you don't want to, when you move it in front of the window, you don't want to put it exactly on the same position as the window, because you'll get Z fighting issues and you'll get all these artifacts when you try and render it. So it depends how accurate your renderer is, but I just like to push it out a little bit, just because you don't notice a difference. So I'll push it out a bit, and then what I'll do is I'll go into edge mode, and I will start loading. Please wait. I'll start just bringing these out, and I won't move it out. I'll give it a little bit of, so it's a little bit of a beveled edge there, and I'll sort of bring it down here, just really quick. Just make it go underneath to tiny little bit. Alright, and now we've got our mesh that we're going to put our drops on. I'll quickly unwrap it. Just quick unwrap, and then just do a little relax to get it to its proper proportions. That'll be right. Okay, so now we've unwrapped it, and I'll just put the texture on. So basically in here, so depending on what you use, I'm using Corona, so I'll just drag a Corona material in. Now import the sequence. Instead of putting in the matte, I drag it to the diffuse color first. So I will put that onto there. I'll give it a yeah, so now I can view it. So now I can see exactly how big it's going to be before I start, before I have to render it heaps to see what it looks like. So now if I scroll through, you can see it animates, and I can already see that it's too big for what I want at the moment. So I'll just go into the texture, and I'll just tile it a few times, and that looks pretty good. So yeah. So, and you can see down here, it down here it follows along the window, which is really cool. I can drag it into my displacement channel, and I'll give this a color, some sort of purpley color. Now I'll do a quick render and see what it looks like as displacement. Alright, so it's obviously popping out way too far, so I'll just go into my displacement settings and change that to like maybe half that. See what that looks like. Yep, so that looks pretty, I'm pretty happy with that. So now the next step is to add the opacity map. And I'll just chuck that into opacity. And then if we render again, and it's terrible because I remembered we tiled it, so we have to match the tiling. So, match the tiling, now we render. And bam! We've got but you can do a lot with that effect hopefully, so I hope you have fun. And I hope you enjoyed it. Cheese.